Okay. Mhm. Hi, Dora. Hi, Gary Howe. And hi, Russell Goldman. Welcome to all of you. I'll be ready to go in just a few more minutes. I want to give some time for others to arrive, but thank you for arriving promptly. Okay, tonight's topic is the climate emergency gets worse. And in the description, I have placed a number of links to articles that are relevant to this topic. The first two actually are most relevant to the topic, at least to the negative side of the topic. And the third is on regenerating agriculture, regenerating actually nature, because I think that's the only way we're going to get out of this. It's becoming very clear now that it's not simply a matter for us to stop the flow of carbon into the air and to stop the use of fossil fuels and to shift to different kinds of energy. But it's also very, very important. Well, it's very important that I shift away from the promo to myself. Here we go. Sorry about that. But it's very, very important for us to okay, could you hear me while the promo is on? Oh, there we go. Hey, you had lots of activity now. That's very good. Hey, Randy. Hey, Steve. Nice to see you. Okay, once again, the theme is the climate emergency gets worse. Okay, and there are two articles on it's getting worse, which I placed in the description, and one article on it's getting better. And I'll talk about the two articles, but I'm not going to read them flat out. But let's simply talk about them. The first one is the emergency in the Amazon. Title of the article is hashtag pray for Amazonia goes viral as Twitter users call attention to the international emergency of fires that are devastating the Brazilian rainforests. The basic problem is the rainforest has been burning for 3 weeks. People are saying we're on the verge of losing it completely if the fire isn't put out. The loss of trees, the loss of the biodiversity is what is accelerating climate change. This article from Common Dreams is written by Jake Johnson, their staff writer, one of their staff writers, and you can just see a picture, a photo of a devastating fire if you pull up the article. Let me pull it up for you here. I might as well shift to the article now. And there we go. That's the devastating fire. That's the picture of the devastating fire. Fires burning trees next to grazing land in the Amazon basin in Zadoca, Brazil. Anyway, the hashtag Pray for Amazonia went viral on Tuesday. Social media users were trying to call attention to this. These fires are so intense they can be seen from space. Meanwhile, the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, who made opening the Amazon to corporate exploitation a key plank of his election campaign. And by the way, it's pretty clear that he was elected with the undercover assistance of the United States. Okay. It's also pretty clear that he's a fascist. So think what you want about that, but that seems to be the lay of the land. Twitter users on Tuesday slammed the media for paying too little attention to the blazes, particularly given the essential role the rainforest plays in absorbing planet-orbiting carbon dioxide, a capacity that earned it, the forest that is, the nickname uh, uh, lungs of the world, quote unquote. And there were a lot of comments on one that it's one of the most important ecosystems on the earth. During May, the National Space Research Institute, which is called the INPE, gathered some satellite data published in June, showing that deforestation has risen dramatically under Bolsonaro. INPE findings showed the Amazon lost 739 square miles during the 31 days of May. That's equivalent to two football pitches every minute. The number of forest fires in the rainforest in Brazil is up 82% from last year. The fires are purposely set by ranchers to clear the land. They then burn out of control. The Bolsonaro government has eliminated restrictions on burnings. And then there's the call that this has to be stopped. Everybody calling for it to be stopped. Over Twitter, the loss of trees, the loss of the biodiversity is what is accelerating climate change. You have people saying over Twitter, this finally got attention in Newsweek on Tuesday. One large fire, which started in late July, burnt around 1,000 hectares of an environmental reserve in the Brazilian state of Rondônia, located on the border um, with Bolivia. The blaze, along with others in the region, created dense plumes of smoke spread far across the state, endangering the health of people who live in the area and the lives of animals. Various fires have also been burning in the state of Mato Grosso, according to satellite imagery. That's a place, or has been a place, where there has been very thick jungle. I remember learning that when I learned geography in junior high school many, many, many years ago. The Mato Grosso was the center of the Brazilian jungle. Don't know exactly what's happened since then. smoke was so thick that in Sao Paulo today, the cloud from the burning of the rainforest in Rondonia covered the city. How far away is Sao Paulo from the area that is burning? 3,300 kilometers or 2,052 miles away from the Boa Vista area where the forest fire was burning. To give you a comparison, some idea of how far that is, Athens, Greece, is closer to London than Sao Paulo is to Boa Vista. And then you see the dark city of Sao Paulo in the daytime, made dark by the smoke. Sao Paulo is a city which, for those of you who don't know, approaches the city of New York in size, or may even be larger by now than New York. I haven't really kept up with it. It's the largest city in Brazil. It's larger than Rio and larger than Brasilia, which is now the capital city. The advocacy group Amazon Watch on Tuesday said the Bolsonaro regime's attacks on the world's largest rainforest was an international tragedy. And in answer to the question, what can we do? The group Amazon Watch tweeted, 1. Support the courageous resistance of the indigenous peoples of the Amazon. 2. Make clear to the agribusiness and financiers involved in the destruction that we won't buy their products. I don't know how we can make that clear to them. I don't know how we can be clear on when their products are finished. I don't know how it can be clear which products are coming from there. Certainly, with the government in the United States we have now, there will be no way to make that clear. But God willing, by the time they get any products out of that place, there'll be entirely different governments inside of the United States who will be attending to the climate imperative as quickly as they can. Okay, meanwhile, there are plans here to hold a global climate strike. Actually, it's not just here, it's across the planet. Thousands pledged to attend rallies across the planet to turn up the political heat and demand action. By turning up the political heat, well, let's talk through the article. The organizers behind the global climate strike movement, from teenage students to adults who had fought for climate action for decades, on Tuesday called on all people who want to halt the climate crisis to join the worldwide action on September 20th. So you get that? September 20th is going to be a very key day. 350.org, which is one of dozens of international, national, and local groups organizing the strike. Now, they announced Tuesday that with a month to go before the demonstration, thousands of people have already signed up to take part in the strike and the week of action that's planned for the days that follow. The strike is being organized amid increasingly dire news and predictions about the climate crisis. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, reported last week that July 2019 was the hottest month on record. And by the way, I have not noticed yet that this month was any less hot than July. The number of 90-degree days we have here in the Washington area is astonishing, with scientists cautioning that warming will get worse unless fossil fuel emissions are drastically reduced. On Sunday, Icelanders held a funeral for the country's first glacier to be entirely lost due to the warming of the planet. And Bill McKibben tweeted, in September, we have to turn up the political heat to convince world governments that carbon emissions must be reduced to net zero as quickly as possible to keep the Earth from warming more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. But obviously, that is not enough. We have to, we must find ways to withdraw the carbon that we've placed into the atmosphere, to take it back and sequester it in the soil. Large gatherings are expected in major cities, including New York, London, and Berlin, with strikes taking place across Africa, Latin America, and Asia as well. In addition to the global climate strike on the 20th, during the week of action from September 24th to 28th, organizers will hold protests targeting specific fossil fuel companies and projects, teach-ins, people's assemblies, and other events. We're talking about trying to get 2 to 3% of the population, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot of people. It is a lot of people. 2 to 3% of the population here in the United States is 10 million people alone. The goal was stated by a student organizer named Sana, who was attending a climate strike in New Jersey. And she said this to the UN Foundation. We're calling for adults and students to be striking. Don't go to work, don't go to school, speak up about climate change because it's something we need to be talking about and something we need to show our leaders that we care about. And there's a picture of Sana in the article. You should be able to see it. Yes, you can see Sana. She's very worth seeing, I think. Anyway, 2 to 3% of the population, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. Somebody recently, I think it was Chris Hedges, pointed to the idea that if you can get, oh, I think it was Ralph Nader actually, okay, who originated this, that 2 to 3% of the population, okay, of any area, okay, is enough to make a revolution. I don't know if that's true in the United States, but if we had 10 million people on the streets all over the United States, I think we'd be beginning to get there. Because of the actions of the United States government and the fossil fuel industry, my generation has never known a world free from the impacts of climate change, said Mr. Barrett. Barrett is, I lost who Barrett is. I'm trying to get it back. Vic Barrett, a plaintiff in the Juliana versus United States case involving children, teenagers, and young adults, who was suing the U.S. government for failing to protect them from fossil fuel emissions. So that's who Vic Barrett is. And of course, I'm certain he's right about that. And millions of people have taken part in climate strikes all over the world since September 20th of 2018. It's getting close to a year now, when Greta Thunberg held a one-person protest outside the Swedish parliament and refused to attend school until her government took um, um, until our government took action that meaningful to curb fossil fuel emissions, which have helped make the last 4 years the warmest on record. Strikes have taken place on a weekly basis since then in countries including Belgium, Uganda, the US, Australia, and Japan. They've been credited with helping to convince several counties and cities to declare a climate emergency and the European Commission to commit 250 billion to combating the crisis. Thunberg tweeted on Tuesday, "We will go on as long as it takes." And there's Greta today on August 20th, 2019 at 10:51 a.m. Our movement continues to grow, and we won't rest till we stop burning fossil fuels and until we begin a rapid uh, uh, till we begin a rapid energy uh, revolution with equity, reparations, and climate justice at its heart, said May Beeve, executive director at 350.org. Global Grassroots Movement, Extinction Rebellion, which has organized its own public actions around the world, expressed support for the climate strike and called on those who are concerned about the future of the planet to push through their despair and echo anxiety and turn such energy to action. And they are going to do that on September 20th and afterwards between September 24th and September 28th. And there are more tweets here and photos in the article. And the final sentence says, shortly after the week of action ends on September 28th, Extinction Rebellion will begin its own worldwide rebellion involving the peaceful occupation of parts of London and calling on people all over the globe to rise up and rebel for our deep love of life and the need to protect it. So, obviously, the climate crisis is getting worse. The emergency, okay, is getting worse. And our young people and others are rising to demand action to get the emergency under control. And as I said earlier, we have to get it under control, not simply, not simply by having net zero emissions, okay, of fossil fuels, uh, and shifting to other sources, okay, of energy, to sources that are entirely renewable, but we also have to draw down the carbon that we have placed in the air and turn back the clock on that as soon as we can. I'm glad to see my camera's not frozen and everything is still operating well. Hi, Dale Weaver and Bonnie. Nice to see you here. Nice to see you all here. Please share this. But please share, by the way. Okay. So share this for me. I'll go back to the new screen now. Okay. So the third article I wanted to go over is not actually about a worsening of the emergency, but doing something about it. The title of the article is Got Climate Anxiety? Watch The Biggest Little Farm, a template for regeneration. And that was an article carried by Common Dreams on August 19th, written by Diana Donlan, and it's about a movie. The movie is called The Biggest Little Farm. It says if you've seen the movie, you've caught a glimpse of nature's superpower in living color. It is a power she uses quietly and faithfully. It is a power we could harness right now across Earth's 1.1 billion acres of deserted farmland to combat the escalating perils of biodiversity loss, food insecurity, and global warming. It's a power we humans continuously fail to recognize. Okay, what is it? It's nature's power of self renewal, known in farming parlance as regeneration. Okay, this movie has been playing in the theater since May, and it's scheduled for release on Amazon and iTunes this week. And that means it will be available on the Amazon Fire Stick and maybe on Roku too this week, and on Apple if it's going onto iTunes as well. And the movie is about how Molly and John Chester harness this force on their farm, Apricot Lane in Moore Park, California. And the article says it's a vibrant place where earthworms, snails, snakes, bees, chickens, cows, ducks, dogs, pigs, hawks, gophers, hummingbirds, and even coyotes all play a role. It's a farm where instead of continually waging war against nature, the Chesters actively foster the conditions that allow her to breathe, flourish, and regenerate. Then the article criticizes the monocultures that we have been cultivating for so long, the last 80 years, they say in the article. They say we've pushed farming in the direction of the monoculture towards intensive productivity focused on yields of single crops. And the article says, quote, this reductionist framework is ruthlessly extinguishing the diversity of life, as is demonstrated by the precarious fight of entire species like the monarch butterfly. Okay, by the way, one of our friends here has cultivated a garden, which is in back of the two buildings small development, okay, that we have here, okay, in Ashburn, and she has planted some flowers in her garden. And the other day she sent us a picture, okay, of the flowers, and right in the middle of the flowers was a monarch butterfly. We were so happy to see that. Anyway, monocultures are not resilient, and they're a dangerous template for the 21st century. And the article remarks that it's not smart to put all your eggs in one basket. And at Apricot Lane, diversification is one of the guiding philosophies. Okay, apart from actually rearing an ark of animals, they grow 75 different varieties of fruit, including citrus and stone fruits. This integrated and diversified approach creates resilience so that the farm remains viable even as the weather becomes prone to wild and unpredictable fluxes. The biggest little farm will likely leave you inspired, hopeful even, and you'll want all your friends to see it. But the movie is much more than simply an ode to the Chester's storybook vision and grit. The story of the triumph of Apricot Lane Farm provides us with a model that can lead our planet back to health. How exactly did the Chesters, who had no farming background, resuscitate the parched and degraded landscape that they found when they arrived, at Apricot Lane? Most essentially, they began by nursing their soil back to health. They composted like crazy to enhance fertility above and below ground. I'm reading from the article now, of course. They planted cover crops in the neglected fields. They brought in flocks of animals to graze and fertilize the land with dung and uh, with urine. They moved these animals regularly so that the pastures received the benefit of animal impact, but were not overgrazed. They did not spray poisons that kill life in the soil, as well as non target species like songbirds. They did not till, thereby allowing soil aggregates to form and soil structures to rebuild. By keeping their soil fed, covered, and protected, they succeeded in increasing the soil's carbon content, which means they sequestered soil out of the air. They increased the soil's content, its water holding capacity, and its fertility in just a few years. That's like 3 years, 4 years. And once the soil was healthy, everything started falling into place. Green grasses flourished, saplings grew into trees, animals had babies, ducks happily took care of the snail problem plaguing the orchard. Hawks snatched up the gophers that had been mowing down the roots of young trees. Carbon in the soil held precious groundwater despite a prolonged drought. Life on the farm became increasingly abundant and resilient. When presented with remarkable examples like this of nature using her superpower, and that many people say, quote, that's wonderful, but it can never happen here. We have a different climate. It's hotter here, it's colder here, we have a different type of soil, we get more rain, we get less rain, unquote. They would be wrong. It's true that different crops flourish in different climates, but the principles that the Chesters follow to turn the Apricot Lane farm from an arid wasteland to a verdant paradise are straightforward and are by universal. The key is in building carbon rich soil. The real takeaway from this movement is that the miracle of self renewal can happen anywhere. Once soil health restoration becomes the priority and the processes that allow nature to regenerate are set into motion, uh, then that miracle can happen. Okay, and many of us long to be a part of that healing and to feel more connected with the rhythms of nature. We intuitively understand that bringing life to the land, as we see happen in Apricot Lane Farm, is a critical part of addressing the looming climate emergency. It's time to invite everyone to engage in solutions that teach us to be stewards. Anyone can plant a fruit tree or start a community compost project. Let's make nature's life affirming potential central to our collective vision of the future, a future that offers hope instead of a doomsday scenario. Let's get to work to help nature unleash her super healing powers. There are 1.1 million acres of abandoned farmland just waiting to be restored, and nature is dying to help. And by the way, in previous streams here, I have pointed out that a very essential part of the fuel for regenerating the soil and sequestering carbon into the ground is proper financing for these particular projects. I call your attention to the role of modern money theory in this, and the idea that we have far more policy space than we now are using, or that the federal government is now actually using. We can run much larger deficits than we run now to fund the sort of activity that regenerates the land and sequesters carbon in the soil, pulls it out of the ground. Now, some of this can be part of people going back to the land and owning agricultural cooperatives. Some of it can on urban projects of various kinds that compost and that regenerate land in the urban areas, and that create urban farms to ease the food supply problems of our cities. This is very, very important, and this kind of activity can be funded in part by the federal job guarantee program that has okay, there's a piece of legislation introduced into the Senate by Bernie Sanders to start a federal job guarantee program. These kinds of projects can, the people who work on them can be funded by the federal job guarantee program. That is, the workers can be paid a living wage with good fringe benefits while they do this valuable thing for their community, namely restoring the vacant land in the urban areas and seeing to it that that land sequesters carbon and produces fresh fruits and vegetables for people. So, financing based on knowledge of the modern money theory point of view is extremely important for this sort of thing to happen. And also to have a renewal of farming in our rural areas that bring small farms back to life again and create the kind of agriculture that we see at Apricot Lane Farm. This kind of thing is absolutely essential. So, the two articles on the climate crisis getting worse, one article on how to get us out of this fix. We've got to pay attention, people. We've got to make this happen. The lives of ourselves and our grandchildren are at stake. So, I want to check in on your comments now. Hi, Susan Beaver. How are you? Nice to see you. Any comments or questions about this stream? By the way, there I am. I'm back fully on the screen. There's a little bit of a delay. Okay, so I also planned a second stream for tonight. And if you don't have any questions, just want to discuss anything that I've talked about, I will say goodbye for a few minutes and move on to the second stream. Okay, but my daughter Devorah says Siberia is Siberia too. Oh, you mean Siberia is burning too? Yes, the Amazon fires and the Siberia peat fires. Yes, I know Siberia is burning too. Susan says, "Great, thanks. How are you?" "I'm fine, thank you. Very well." Susan said, "We saw your computer screen with the article on it." Yes, it did have the article on it. And this one just has me and my books on it, and the in depth banner, because this is the in depth show. Anyway, while I'm waiting for some more comments, I am going to flash my share, like, and subscribe screen for you. So please share, like, and subscribe. And please become a patron at www.patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. Please remember, even $1 will help. If you can manage more, then that will help even more. And I will be very grateful if we can start a stream of small contributions to help me keep the lights on here. Now I'll go back though, and meanwhile I will look at comments you're making. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'm going to end this stream. The second stream is going to be on the antics of Kamala Harris. The antics of the Kamala one. So I'll be ending this now.